So, I saw Avengers Endgame, and I'm going to start work on my Versus video with Infinity War very soon. But whilst you're waiting, here's my spoiler-free thoughts on this film. Now, the movie spends a good amount of time, as you would expect, with our remaining Avengers mourning over the tragic events in the last film, and I loved the way the movie showcased our heroes in their depressed states. You see all of them deal with grief in their own distinct ways, and it just added to their humanity and who they were as characters. When watching this, you're like, yeah, Thor would react this way, Captain America would react this way, Black Widow would react this way, even Ant-Man would act this way. It was beautifully done. And then when the film gets to the action, it is so great. And it's directed by the Russo brothers, so as you would expect, it's super fast-paced, beautifully choreographed, and very well shot. And they wrote this movie too, so the characters, the story, and the rest of the writing is some of the best you will see out of the entire MCU. And for a 3-hour movie, this really didn't feel like 3 hours. It feels like it's about 2.5 hours, and that's always the sign of a good movie. So if you were afraid that this was going to really feel its 3-hour length like the Lord of the Rings movies, you don't have to worry. As for the music in this movie, it was great. You will notice that there are times when it reuses music from Infinity War and some soundtracks from the previous Marvel movies, and it was all very well utilized. That being said, I don't think the soundtrack was as good as Infinity War's, but it was still better than the soundtrack for pretty much all the other Marvel Cinematic Universe films. Now, I have a lot of other great things to say about this movie, but that will require me to delve deep into spoilers, so you can hear about all those in my in-depth Versus video. As for stuff I didn't like, well, the movie makes use of a certain concept, and I thought there were a lot of glaring plot holes that it had. And these aren't nitpicks, these are some actual problems. Now, the movie might have explained it. If so, I will need to listen to the explanation again, but as far as I'm concerned, I got everything, and it really didn't make any sense. And I doubt I misheard anything, given how you see the concept in use. Also, I thought the pacing of the first hour of the movie had some problems. It wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, but there were points where I felt they could have made better use of their time if they executed the writing a little differently. And my final complaint is the jokes. Now, the Russo brothers are the only directors in the MCU that hold back on the jokes and use them at the right times. They did this with The Winter Soldier, they did it with Civil War and Infinity War, and that's why it baffles me that they didn't do it as well in Endgame. In the first act of the movie, I thought there were more jokes than was appropriate, especially when you take into account that this is the time when our characters are in mourning. Now, there were some jokes that the characters made in their depressed states, and that was fine, because making jokes like those during very dark times is very human, and it felt like they were trying to find ways of happiness to uplift each other's spirits. But then there were other jokes that were just done for the sake of it, and given the depressed state they were in, these felt very out of place, and were actually taking away from the mood that the movie did such a great job of setting up. And finally, as much as I love the way this movie wraps up, all the characters get their arcs concluded, but I did have a problem with the way one of them ended. And without going into details, those are all my problems with Endgame. And what else can I say except, as a conclusion to all the films in the MCU, this was a great movie. And your expectations are constantly thrown off, and I love it when a movie is able to do that. And again, the Russo brothers are the only ones that are able to pull this off out of all the directors and writers in the MCU. And yeah, I loved this film so much, especially that last hour. It's time for the score. I give Avengers Endgame a 9 out of 10. Now, much like my review of Infinity War, by the time you see my Versus video, the score could go up. So stay tuned for my Versus video of Infinity War and Endgame to see what my final thoughts on this movie are. So, that's it for my quick review. Comment below and let me know what you thought of Avengers Endgame. I assume that all of you have seen it at this point, but be sure to comment below and let me know what you thought. And for those of you that haven't seen the movie, for the love of God, don't scroll down and read the comments. Give my video a thumbs up and then leave, or contact me on Twitter if you want to ask me anything about this film without getting any spoilers, and I will answer your questions spoiler free. So with that said, I'm gonna go get to work on the Versus video, and hopefully I will see all of you very soon. Take care.